Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to have another episode of Tarot on Tour and we're going to talk about Singapore. Now I don't have my usual setup as you can see because obviously I'm traveling, so I had to make do with whatever I could find. Thankfully the hotel we're staying in has a nice table, has a nice desktop, and I'm just going to do that. But it's gonna be fun because, you know, whenever we're traveling, and if you're a traveler like me, you'll know that you know, even the smallest things that are different from when you're back home, it makes it even more interesting because it's something that, of course, it becomes perhaps a bit of an issue, perhaps you have to solve something at the last moment, something that is not working, and you have to think outside the box and you have to find a different kind of way to approach something than before. So Singapore, let's talk about Singapore. Singapore is absolutely beautiful. It's a place that it's a city, but it's a country itself. It's something that, to be honest with you, I've been to Singapore many times because Singapore is probably the best way for anyone in Australia to just have a bit of a stopover and just fly over then after to anywhere else in Asia, but also to Europe. And that's what I mostly do when I don't fly to Bangkok. And Singapore has been changing. I've actually witnessed this change in so many years, and I've actually come to the realization that there is a new atmosphere, there's a new vibe to the city. It's something that I hadn't noticed before, but I think that it's taking place more and more. And because of the constant flux of immigration into Singapore, because of the fact that, for example, there's a lot of companies, even companies that actually are traded, so listed in the Australian stock market, have their headquarter, let's say, in Singapore. There's a lot of Australians. There's a lot of Australians. Now, what I'm going to do today is slightly different because I think that the format, it's obviously new, and the format that I was adopting before, that you've all seen in the Tarot on Tour Sydney episode, I think I want to change that ever so slightly. But let's have a look at how it works in this case. So first of all, we're going to have a look at this tarot and oracle hole, and but before we start with that, I posted a couple of photos on Instagram, and people have been asking me about these new rings, these 3 new rings here, and I have to say that it was the absolutely lovely jasmine at Isaiah 45 that you know, where I bought them. Isaiah 45 is one of those really super duper sweet shops in Hadge Lane. Hadge Lane is very famous because it's got all of these kind of new places. There's lots of food places, there's a lot of you know, shops that sell really trendy clothing and jewelry. And obviously, as you can see, I if you watch my channel, you probably know that I really love statement rings or out there rings, and I've been absolutely fascinated by these 3. I really love them. And then you know, when I chose them, I spoke to Jasmine, and I told her that I have a YouTube channel, that I was going to mention her, and she was over the moon. She was really happy about it, and she also gave me a discount, so she was really sweet to me. And she let me you know, take a couple of films or footage. Now, Hadge Lane in general is very trendy, and it's always completely packed, and that's why it's also a pedestrian only street, because trust me, it's also really narrow and you could not have cars going down there. What happens is that there used to be a couple of tarot and oracle shops over there. They are not there anymore. So you know, that's what happens when you travel. That's sometimes you have inconveniences, sometimes things don't go exactly the way you planned them to go. And I really wanted to go to these two places and interview the owners and show you a couple of things, you know, that they were on sale. Unfortunately, one of them I could contact. It's just they moved just a couple of blocks down, but they were not happy for me to film. Basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a tarot deck that I bought over there. So basically it's this one here, and it's a very special deck. It's called the Hybrid Tarot. Let me see if I can zoom in. So the Hybrid Tarot. Why the Hybrid Tarot? This is a very interesting project of cooperation between Eugene Leong and Justin So, illustrated by Wendy Yu. Now these are Singaporeans. Okay, this is a Singapore 100% production. You know, it has been written by Singaporeans, it has been illustrated by Singaporeans, it has been produced, printed, and everything in Singapore. And it's a hybrid tarot because it's actually a hybrid between, as you can see here, a tarot Lenormand and an oracle. So it's extremely interesting. And it comes with this Lenormand style, Grand Tableau Lenormand style. Let's see if I can show you cloth. So as you can hopefully see, there's it's like it's lit. Let's say it's very similar to a Grand Tableau Lenormand, but it's got a few elements, additional elements in it, alchemical elements as well, for example. And it's very interesting. It's got this kind of winged horse, which is not a unicorn because it doesn't have a horn, but it's a very beautiful one. It's a satin cloth, so it's actually high quality. What I wanted to show you is basically, let's zoom back in. First of all, the guidebook. This is a deck that I've never seen, and to be honest with you, you cannot find it anywhere else. They don't actually ship overseas, they don't sell it online. They only give it, you know, to a couple of shops to sell in Singapore. And I have to say that Singapore, the tradition of tarot reading has been changing a lot, but we'll talk about that when I'll talk about the Three of Cups, which is that is also on Haji Lane. So going back to the Hybrid Tarot, as you can tell, it's very interesting. So for each and every card, you've got an oracle meaning, you got a tarot meaning, you got an Lenormand meaning, you got an astrology kind of description, and then you have a general oracle message. So for each and every one of these cards, I will show you later the deck, which is it's got a very beautiful art style, very beautiful combination of colors. And what I really like is one of those things that you can always tell whenever I'm happy talking about it, because I absolutely love it when there's a kind of, you know, those kind of decks that you can actually line up together card by card, next to the other, and you have a tableau, you have like a painting. And this is actually giving you a little bit of a meaning. So if this happens to be the combination of the cards, you have a different meaning for you know, depending on the combination that you get. So obviously it's called the overlapping card series, and you know, duality or blending, and then it explains why it's explaining the meaning. In this case, for example, is really interesting because it's referring back to the Egyptian tradition. So during the Egyptian times, the afterlife journey involves meeting many divinities. This series depicts the protector bringing the soul for judging, the weighing of the scale, actually the weighing of the heart, and recording of the results. So it is very interesting. Then there's obviously there's a couple of example of questions that you can ask to the deck, whether you want to read it as a yes or a no answer. Then it tells you how to work with the major arcana versus the minor arcana versus the court cards. It talks a little bit about the numerology as well, and the elements. It talks about how to work with this deck exclusively from an oracle point of view as well, which is, you know, it's always very interesting for me to study these things. And then it talks about the Lenormand meaning. I can assure you this is going to be something that I'm going to study. Let me see if I can show you a little bit better. So obviously for each and every card we have a tarot, we have an element, we have a divinity, and all of this of course is, you know, including also a bit of description of alchemical meanings and interactions. And then we have a couple of spreads again, and then obviously we talk about the grand tableau. There you go, it's here. I absolutely adore the fact that, you know, this book is so complete, it's so interesting, it talks a little bit about everything, and it gives you the possibility to really look into what you're doing and also be versatile with this deck. These are the authors. And about the illustrator, it talks about the illustrator as well. So this is the, as I said, the hybrid tarot, but let me show you the cards. Zooming in a bit. I love the fact that there's this Swarovski kind of like bead on here, so it makes him so much easier to open it. I wish all of the tuck boxes were like this, honestly, because it's actually really cute. And these are the cards. I think I've already shuffled them because I actually did a reading. The cardstock is very it's very durable because so it's a matte, very soft kind of tactile feel to it, because it's on the smaller side. And let me see if I can show you with a tarot deck, standard size tarot deck, how smaller the card are. So this is a standard tarot deck from Los Carabeo, and as you can tell, it is definitely much smaller, it's narrower and definitely shorter. Because of that, what happens is that if it were a tarot with a standard size, you would have a more flexible cardstock, if you understand what I mean. Obviously, because being longer, you have more flexibility and bounce. But it's still really, really good, and to be honest with you, it's very easy to shuffle anyway. So these are the card, and as you can see, there is a little bit of everything when it comes to iconology, when it comes to symbology, when it comes to, you know, tradition and the basic cultural aspects of these cards. You have literally a bit of everything. You have something coming from the Christian tradition, you have something very modern, you have something coming from the you know, the Buddhist tradition, you have something coming from pretty much from everywhere. Also a bit of Celtic tradition, for example, which is very interesting. And this is the reason why I really do believe that this tarot deck, let's call it tarot, although it's you know, a bit of a Egyptian tradition as well, a bit of a hybrid, as we said before. But the reason why I feel that this deck is so traditionally Singaporean, because in Singapore you can find exactly that. There is so many expats in there. So there's a lot of Europeans, there's a lot of Chinese, there's a lot of Indians. And as a matter of fact, you can actually go around in Singapore and visit Little India and Chinatown, and visit all the parts of the city where there's a lot of companies that they have their Asian headquarters. But Singapore is also made in a different kind of measure than other cities in Asia. So it's, what I mean with that is, because it's a city that is also a country, it is relatively easier, let's say, to administrate. And therefore there's a lot of things that have been done in such a way that they actually promote human decency. There's really no other way to say that. It does promote human decency. So in the underground system, for example, you will see there's a lot of volunteers. They learn different languages. They will come to you with a smile, and that was the most heartwarming thing, because sometimes, I mean, I've been there multiple times, so we didn't really need any help. But I found there were a lot of families that perhaps they were there for the first time, and the beautiful thing was that they were always helped. They were never judged. There were all these volunteers coming and saying hi and welcoming you and saying, where do you have to go? Can I give you a hand with that? And explaining the best way to do that. Everything is done in such a way that it's easy for you to live there. Certainly not the weather. With 34 degrees and 95% humidity, I can assure you that it was a bit of a shocker for us, because coming from Sydney where it's winter, obviously, you jump on a flight, it's a 7-8 hours flight, and then you're there and you're like, oh my God. So obviously it's a bit of a shocker. But everything else, everything that they can do to help you, they actually do it. And it's a super safe city. You really feel like you're in a safe environment. You're in a welcoming environment. Now, this place, as I said before, where I bought this deck, it's called Chi New Age Shop, and it's just a couple of blocks down from Hadge Lane. I could not film when I was there. I was told to wait and come back for the owner of the shop. So the person that actually sold me the deck was very kind, but because she wasn't the owner of the shop, she didn't know whether the owner would have been okay with me filming or not, which is absolutely fine. Unfortunately, because there was a parade, a military parade, on the very same day in which we were supposed to go back and do some filming, we got stuck in traffic because they blocked off several streets, so we couldn't go back in time. It was unfortunately too late when we got there. The shop was already closed, and the day after they were not open, and then we flew out of Singapore. So it's such a pity, because it would have been really nice to show you that. What I can show you though is Singapore, Kinokuniya, which is, as you can imagine, a great place. It was funny because we entered and you never know what you're gonna find, because obviously there's several Kinokoniyas around the world. It's a Japanese chain of bookstores. They have a flagship store. I think they call it the Asian flagship store in Singapore, and it's basically one of the biggest Kinokuniyas I've ever seen. I have seen the flagship store in Tokyo, and that one was definitely much bigger. There's a really big one in San Francisco as well, and there's a very big one in Sydney, obviously, and one in Bangkok. But I would say there's a lot of really big Kinokuniyas around the world, but the one that I've seen in Singapore has to be the second biggest one that I've ever seen. But you never know what you're gonna find, because obviously, in some places they don't really sell tarot decks. At the beginning in Sydney, you had only a few decks. Now you have hundreds. When I arrived there, it was actually my husband that saw the tarot first. And then he turned to me and with a smile on his face, and I was like, what would you see? What? And he was like, it didn't say anything, it just pointed behind him. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna spend so much money in here. So this was my haul in tarot, in Tarot Land, let's call it, in Kinokuniya, Singapore. So these 3 decks, this is what I bought there, and I'm very happy that I found these ones, because I have, to be honest with you, the Tarot of Disorder and Innocence is by Los Carabels, a very special edition. We'll talk about this later. Then I found the cat formations note, which is absolutely lovely. And as you can imagine, having 2 cats back at home, there's my niece actually minding them now. I am missing them so much, so I had to find something with cats in them. And then I found this deck, which is, I have never seen it before, honestly. It's by Elena Fairchild, so obviously I would have thought that it would have been kind of famous. And it's a Blue Angel publication, but believe it or not, I have never seen it in Australia. So whether it's something that has not been released in Australia yet, or perhaps it's something that is just falling under the radar. It's something that I've never seen before. But let's have a look at these decks. So let's start with the Tarot of Disorder and Innocence by Diego Gabriele, and this is a very special edition by Los Carabeo. It's numbered and limited, although not that limited because there's at least 4,000 of these that have been published. I suppose this is a tarot deck that could be a little bit controversial, so because just a fair warning, there is nudity. So what I've done, initially I had something like a visceral reaction towards this deck, in the sense that when I saw the few cards that you see, for example, on Amazon websites, whenever they show you a couple of examples, I have noticed that. And I have noticed a couple of things. So this deck has a concept. The concept behind it is that what the author is saying is that he wanted to portray the disorder in which we live, which is due to the fact that we actually lost our original meaning, and we have accepted to be channeled towards one way or the other, depending on the necessity of the world. So basically we have accepted to not think with our own minds. And just we just take whatever we've been told at face value, believing in everything that we hear. And that creates disorder because, of course, there might be some true things, there might be some not true things, and therefore we have lost our original initial force that was going towards in a very, very specific direction. So that is the disorder. But at the same time, this tarot deck wants to portray the innocence, and the way in which the author wants to portray this innocence is by portraying in black and white and very stylized kind of artwork the nudity that belongs to a young adult. In this way, there's a lot of there is that kind of concept that when we are not being corrupted, we haven't been corrupted by the world yet, we still preserve that kind of innocence that is born with us the moment in which we are born. Now, there's a lot of cultures that actually refers back to this kind of concept of being pure when we're born, and then gradually getting corrupted, day by day, until we reach maturity, and maturity is basically the peak of corruption. What I'm going to do, because I trust you guys and I know that I can let you decide for yourself, I remove all the cards that were expressing nudity, not necessarily because I believe that it should not be shown, but I believe that if you want, you have to form your own opinion by yourself. And therefore what I'll do, I will put the a link if you want to purchase this deck in the description box below. It belongs to a new collection by Los Carabeo, which is called Horizons, and it is a daring concept. It is unusual. It goes against the flow. Therefore they wanted to show something provocative. Okay. Personally, I was against buying this deck until a friend of mine got it and she explained to me the concept behind it. I decided to go ahead and buy it. I still do not have a, let's say, my own personal opinion about it. Hasn't got enough information. I haven't had enough time to get into the deck. I had enough time, although, to read the introduction and the reason why, the choices behind these cards, and I kind of understand what the author wants to express, and I also understand that technically the innocence of a young person is corrupted by the mind of an adult, not the other way around. So if this is the concept expressed in the deck, I understand it. However, I still think that I want you to be the mature persons that I'm sure you are, and decide for yourself what you think about this deck. As I said, I removed all of the cards where there was explicit nudity, so this deck, obviously, it's I'm just going to show you a reduced version of it. It is a beautiful deck. When it comes to the artwork, I feel that when it comes to these kind of representations, we need to be very careful, but on the other hand, we also need to understand that things need to be seen with an open mind sometimes. Even so, even with an open mind, I still believe that some of those cards should have been probably represented in a different way, and I'm not entirely sure 100% that I'm actually going to keep this deck. However, I really wanted to, form my own opinion, because it is true that we live in the age of disorder, in the sense that we believe everything that we've been told without even checking, because we don't want to take the responsibility to check whether something is actually true or not. And so this is my way of approaching disorder in my own way. I wanted to check whether this deck was indeed what I had heard about it, and we'll see in the coming days. I didn't have enough time to really look at it, but we'll see in the coming days. What I can say is that the artwork in specific is very beautiful. The black and white creates a really soft kind of contrast, as opposed to other kind of black and white in which you do have that kind of shading. This one is more like a contrasting black and white, but in the softer way, because the features, for example, of the faces are not as delineated as you can tell. For example, even in this card, you just have a little bit of a hint of eyes and eyebrows and the nose and the mouth, etc. And that goes on for the other cards as well. It's an interesting deck, that's for sure. It's an interesting concept, that's also for sure. And it's an interesting approach by Los Carbell to this new collection called Horizons. And I can't wait to see what other decks they're going to publish for that collection. But let's talk about this deck. So this deck is called Wings of Wisdom, a Healing Affirmation Oracle from Nature's Angels by Alana Fairchild. It's been published by Blue Angel. I absolutely adore this deck. It's so cute, but it's also really one of those really strong hug decks that really gives you that kind of a really warm feeling, heartwarming feeling. It's one of those decks that you use whenever you feel down, let's put it this way. So I really, at a certain point, there always are a couple of problems whenever you plan something in a trip and something doesn't go the way you want it to go, and therefore I kind of needed this deck, and I saw it and I thought to myself, this deck is actually coming to me because right now I need it. It's a beautiful deck. It's got a bit of an odd shape because, as you can tell, showing you again with the difference of the standard tarot size. Let's put it this way. So it is a lot bigger, so it's a lot wider, and also almost, I'd say, probably 40% taller than a standard tarot size. But you kind of need it. Although, to be honest with you, I'm thinking about chopping off the affirmation. So what have we got here? We got a keyword, obviously. We got a beautiful artwork. We got a couple of this is the title, and these are the keywords. So transformation, growth, new cycles for butterfly, and then you've got an affirmation. Let me show you. So the affirmation for the butterfly card says, I embrace the transformation that empowers me to fulfill my divine potential. Not just that, as soon as I saw this deck, I was like, okay, I'm going to trim it. I'm going to trim off a little bit of the top, and I'm going to trim off the affirmation. Not that I don't like affirmation, I really do. But what I was actually thinking about doing is I was going to trim it at this point, let's see, like that. And then I was going to round the corner of the affirmation part and have two decks in one. In the sense that I was going to have a deck of only affirmations, and a deck with, the title and the keyword, and obviously the artwork as well. I still think that I'm going to do that. However, when I turn the card, you know, that's what I saw. So basically, whatever is here in the booklet, in the guidebook, it's also in the back of the cards. So in this case, it wouldn't necessarily be a problem because, as you can tell, let's say it wouldn't be a problem to chop off at this point the affirmation at the front. But in other cases, whenever there's more text, that's not the case. Neither. There you go. In this case, I would actually chop off the last sentence of what's behind the card. So I don't really know whether I'm going to do it that way or not. For the time being, in any case, I don't have my professional trimmer, so I cannot do that. But what I really enjoy about this deck is the feel of innocence in these cards, the cuteness of the artwork of the characters in the cards, even the use of these kind of colors. They are brilliant colors. They're not let's say they don't shy away from the vibrancy and the saturation. However, there's always a really it's kind of a kind combination of colors. There's not a lot of contrast, and everything is actually conducive of a very calm and peaceful environment. You kind of feel safe whenever you're looking at the cards, whenever you're looking at the figures on the cards. The fact that they have slightly larger eyes. In some decks, I have to say that would be kind of creepy, but in this deck, because there's always this kind of serene, peaceful kind of expression, it's actually really calming. And I really enjoy this deck. It's something that, you know, you just go through it, you look at it, you read the messages, or perhaps you just make the association between the title and the keywords. It doesn't matter whatever you do with this deck. I can assure you I tried a different kind of usage. Even, to tell you the truth, I even tried pairing it up with the Tarot of Disorder and Innocence, because it pairs down the strong message that is given by the tarot deck by using this as a central focus as an oracle deck, you know, in the center of the two. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a try, because I did use it and I saw that it did work. But I'm just going to say again, for this tarot deck, please remember what we talked about. And I don't want it to be offensive at all, but I just wanted to show you if you're okay with this. If you're not okay with this, please skip ahead. I just wanted to show you how these two work together. So as you can tell, there is that kind of the fact that the oracle, let's call it an oracle card, affirmation card, is in color at this point actually creates some kind of peaceful resonance between the tarot cards and the oracle cards itself. And it's this kind of peace that I was looking for, because there is this sense of innocence that we are presented with. So when at a certain point you fail to find the innocence in the tarot, you definitely do find it in the oracle. And it's something that I believe is actually extremely important, because whenever you have you're presented with, I'd say, something strong, a really strong message, it is one of the most important things is never to lose your grounding. Okay, whether the message is powerful, that it can really knock you off. If you keep yourself grounded, you can actually let's say create this kind of bond with the cards and understand them better, because there's no two ways around that. It's always about understanding them. So this is what I really like about this deck, or the combination about these two decks together, is that there's always that kind of resonance in the artwork. For example, there's a bit of a complementary action between the colors of the oracle and the black and white of the tarot, but there's also that kind of grounding that you can find in the oracle card that helps you understand the message of the tarot cards. So these two together, I think they actually work really well together. We're talking about the Wings of Wisdom and the Tarot of the Sword and Innocence. And because I was saying that I really miss my cats, this is another tarot. It's actually not neither a tarot nor an oracle. It's just affirmation note cards that I found at Kinokuniya, and it's really, really beautiful. As you can tell, it's got envelopes as well, so it's basically notes that you can even send out. Let me just, there you go, here. So this is going to be a mod project as well. Let me zoom in, because these are, as I said before, these are notes. So you can basically write whatever you want and then send them out. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to trim them here, and I'm going to keep this as, you know, you can still use it as a postcard. But these ones are absolutely beautiful, and when it comes to oracle cards, I'm also gonna round the corners. So there's always a cat. You don't always see it at first, but I really love the association of the cats, and knowing cats, I really love the fact that they have been put in these situations in which it almost looks like they're personified somehow, and the messages are really, really hitting the spot. So you will make it on to the top on your own terms. So I really love the messages, and it's something that I will be happy to modify as soon as I go back home. You'll know the right time to pounce. So this is incredibly beautiful. This is so very typical for Singapore, I have to say. So if I had to choose one deck that symbolizes Singapore, it's actually this one, which is not even a deck, because they have this passion for cats. You can see they are well treated everywhere. You know, they have at least, I counted something like 32 decks, not just oracle, but also, you know, tarot, but also affirmation cards, but also notes of this kind based on cats, because it's just really something that they really love. They find it very cute, as I do, of course. As you can tell, this one is inspired by the Great Wave by Hokusai, which is, you know, it's basically combining two of my greatest passions, so animals and Japanese paintings. And I really, really love this deck, and this to me really symbolizes Singapore together with the hybrid tarot that I've shown you before, because it is the kind of a melting pot that Singapore has become, which is symbolized by the melting pot in different cultures. Now let's have a look at another place that I went to, and this is in Suntec City. So it's a shopping complex, and they also have a really, really good tarot shop, as you can see. And the girls I spoke to over there were very, very kind, and they let me, you know, take all the film that I needed. We talked a little bit about the tradition of tarot in this case, and they also confirmed whatever I was talking about with others in the previous days, in which everyone seems to believe that tarot and oracle decks have come back as a kind of a tradition in Singapore, because there's a bit of an acceptance that has, you know, people seem to have come to terms with the possibility of having this kind of spirituality that is not necessarily linked to any systemic religion, but it's actually looking much more into yourself. Now in this shop, I actually bought these two decks, and I bought these two decks because I felt like these two would have been absolutely perfect together. So what I'm going to do, you probably know already the Barbara Walker Tarot, because it's a very old one. I think it's from 1986, if I'm not wrong. Not the teen version, the original version. I don't know whether you've seen the Oracle of Novice Witches, which is a US game, is it? Release, yes, of course. So let's have a look at how these two actually pair up together, because when I saw them, I thought to myself, I really believe that this would be a really interesting combo. Even though, as you can imagine, the size doesn't necessarily match, because the Barbara Walker is a tarot in a tin, which makes it easier, ironically, for me though, to, you know, carry it around wherever I go. As you can imagine, there's only so much room in my suitcase, and I've already filled it up, especially after the tarot haul and oracle haul in Bangkok, which I will show you in my next video. but just to give you a little bit of a preview, I almost collapsed when I had a bit of a misadventure whenever I saw all of the decks that were on sale, especially in Kinokuniya and in another bookstore which is called Asia Books. I almost collapsed. So this is the backs of the Oracle of Novice Witches. I absolutely adore this back. It's really beautiful. But let's have a look at how these two work together. I really believe that there's a really strong conversation going on between these two. They really create that kind of bridge that you want between an oracle and a tarot deck. They really correspond when it comes, for example, to the choice of colors. But it's also because most of the time you will see that the Barbara Walker, because it's a bit thothy, let's say, it does carry those keywords, and those keywords, I believe, they actually complement the keywords on the oracle deck in some kind of a twisted way, in the sense that generally speaking, I look for a keyword in the oracle deck and then I expand on that message looking at the meanings of the tarot cards that are at the side. But in this case, because we still have these keywords on the tarot, we will see that is actually something that comes even in an easier way, because it does create that kind of bridge that we always look for whenever we are trying a good match, a good combo between a tarot deck and an oracle deck. I think that this is one of those combinations in which you kind of have to step aside and let the decks do their job, because they're literally having this kind of conversation that you don't need to be there. You're just the person that is just flipping the cards and sorry about that, and just looking and admiring at this kind of combination and this kind of union, this kind of perfect relationship that they are establishing between themselves. And I really love this oracle deck. It is completely new. I had not seen it before. I don't necessarily know whether it's being released in Australia. I hadn't seen it in Australia, so perhaps it's something that will be released in the future. At least I hope so. But as you know, US Games is first obviously releasing everything in the US. So if you are based in the United States, you will probably have seen it already. But this is just fantastic. I have actually posted a few photos of this combo in Instagram and everyone has been saying the same thing. It looks like these two decks are literally made for each other. And it's also because, as you can notice, when it comes to the Barbara Walker is a bit of a punch in the face sometimes, because it's a very direct kind of deck. But the Oracle of Novice Witches is not necessarily quite the opposite, but it's a very complementary kind of energy to the Barbara Walker. So it works in such a way that it's softening the blow somehow, and it's really giving you the possibility to expand on the message from the tarot cards. So these two are the Oracle of the Novice Witches paired up with the Barbara Walker Tarot. So these two, as I was saying before, I found these decks in the shop which is called Spectrum, and it's in Suntec City, which is this shopping mall basically. And the girls were really sweet, so I could take all of this footage and they were quite happy with it. So this is as I said before, this is an incredible combination, but the shop is full of really interesting things, so I really highly recommend it. If you're in Singapore, go check it out, because they also have sage, they have Palo Alto, for example. They have a lot of interesting tarot reading mats, and they also have tarot bags and stuff like that. So it's really interesting. And one thing that I have to say, that I'm sorry that sometimes you have to say these things, but unfortunately we live in those times. They did not carry any single fake deck at all, which is something that I cannot say for another couple of shops I've been to. So all of the decks that were on sale, obviously at Kinokuniya, but that's because obviously it's a big chain. Sometimes smaller shops carry fake decks, but in this shop all of the decks were genuine 1000%. So I highly recommend. It's called Spectrum and it's in Suntec City. One of the best and most fun activities you can do in Singapore tarot related is spending a night at Three of Cups. Three of Cups is a bar situated in the famous Haji Lane number 53 and is the creation of director and tarot enthusiast Shamini Das. Shamini opened the cocktail bar 7 years ago together with a couple of friends of hers, even though right now she is the sole owner. This is a fantastic place where to spend the night in Singapore, and as you can see, the cocktail list is just amazing. The funny thing is that cocktails are actually named after major and minor arcanas, and if you get overwhelmed by the choice, there's a really fun way to make your choice. Basically, you can see me here picking a card. This is Chamini, by the way. I'm picking a card to see which one of the cocktails I'm going to be drinking, and as you can see, it was really fun because the card that I picked was indeed the Three of Cups. If you purchase 3 signature drinks, you're entitled to have a tarot reading by the lovely Dia from Divine Blessings. By the way, I will make sure to put all of the relevant links in the description box below for you to check them out. And this is drunk me getting a very positive and exciting reading. It was an incredibly fun evening. I cannot recommend this place enough. I'll make sure to go back every time I visit Singapore. Now this is it for today. Thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. If you liked it, please put a like. It really means the world to me, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because it creates these kind of really meaningful conversations that we can have in the comments below, and it also creates the meaningful connections that I'm always seeking. So this is it. Stay tuned because there will be another episode of Tarot on Tour, and I will be filming it from Bangkok, and it will be a really big one because I went berserk on the purchasing of tarot and oracle, even probably too much, because now I'm going to have problems with a suitcase and the weight, but we'll find a way. So stay tuned. Thank you so much. Have a great day.